بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to these broadcasts brought to you by the Lahore India community. Today it is Wednesday, the 15th of December 2021, and in our series Reflections on the Holy Quran, this is broadcast number 284. And these days we are looking at the meanings of the words of chapter 2, verse 96 of the Holy Quran. And this is the sixth broadcast dealing with the words of this verse of the Holy Quran. First, apologies for not being able to bring you these broadcasts for the last 2 days. This has been due to circumstances beyond our control. But rest assured, we hadn't forgotten about you. And we returned as soon as it was possible. Just to remind you that the Lahore Ahmadiyya community was created by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. And he taught that although Muslims believe that after the Holy Prophet Muhammad, another prophet shall come, this cannot be because the Holy Quran says that the Holy Prophet Muhammad was the Khatamun Nabiyyin. And the Holy Prophet explained that by saying, La Nabi Abadi. There is no prophet after me. So there cannot be any prophet, an old one or a new one among the Muslims. But the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also said that when the Ummah, and in fact he was asked this by the companions, what will happen if there are not going to be any further prophets? What's going to happen when the Ummah goes astray? And the Holy Prophet said, well, if that happens, then God will send reformers. And under his guidance, they will explain to Muslims how they've strayed from the correct path or a correct understanding of the teachings of Islam and the Holy Quran and so on. Of course, this will lead to disagreements, and although our brother Muslims are very keen and they hastily start calling each other kafirs and so on, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had said that if one reciter of the kalima says to another reciter of the kalima that you are not a Muslim, you're a kafir, then the person saying it is closer to heresy. This was how strongly the Holy Prophet Muhammad disliked and disapproved of this kafir making, heretic making. Similarly, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said that although people believe that part of the prophetic revelation has been missed from the Holy Quran, like Ayah Rajam and Surah Walayat. This cannot be, because God said, I have revealed it and I will guard it. So, if God is guarding the Holy Quran, how could anything be missed out? Similarly, other people believe that some of the Quranic verses are abrogated. Hazrat Shah Waliullah writes that people believe up to 500 verses of the Holy Quran. In fact, he says more than 500 verses of the Holy Quran are abrogated, but I've investigated, and it's only these, I think he says 5 or 7, I can't remember, which are abrogated. But Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad and the Lahore MDM movement strongly stressed that no verse of the Holy Quran was abrogated, is abrogated, or shall ever be abrogated. The Holy Quran is perfect and all of its commands apply. And our brother Muslims believe that jihad simply means taking the sword, not worrying about our own character, not worrying about our own actions and mode of behavior, but simply taking the swords, and unless non-Muslims agree to recite the kalima, to cut their heads off. This is not jihad. The Holy Prophet, when returning from a battle, said that Muslims were returning from the major jihad, from the minor jihad to the major jihad. And he was asked, what's the major jihad? And the Holy Prophet said, jihad bin nafs, a struggle to control your own vain desires, etc. And Hazrat Sahib stressed that this jihad continues, and it's a duty of every single Muslim to take part in that jihad and to try and control their evil desires, greed, enmity, backbiting. The list is a long one. It's mentioned in many places in the Holy Quran. And you and I, we both know it, and I need not repeat it. So let us go to the go to chapter 2, verse 96, that we are continuing to deal with. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولتجدنهم أحرص الناس على حياة ومن الذين أشركوا يود أحدهم لو يؤمر 1000 سنة وما هو بمزحزحه من العذاب أن يؤمر والله بصير بما يعملون. And you will certainly find them the greediest of people for life. Greedier even than those who set up gods besides Allah. One of them loves to be granted a life of 1,000 years. And his being granted a long life will in no way remove him further off from the chastisement. And Allah is seer of what they do. So today we are going to look at the two words, alafa and sanatin. So let's go to our computer notes. Well, my computer notes. Where are they? Here we are. The first word, its root is Hamza Lam Fa, and it occurs in the Holy Quran 22 times in 4 different forms. The most common form is the noun alf, 14 times as the noun alf, 5 times as the verb allafa, twice as the noun ilaf, and once as mu'allafat. So these are its forms, and in the verb form that we mentioned, it stands for bringing together, to join together, to reconcile. And we'll see how that leads to other meanings in a bit. It also means 1,000, like 1,000 years, etc. It also means being inclined to doing something, and it also means familiarizing and securing. As it says, chapter 166, verse 1, Li ilafi Quraysh, ilafihim rihlat ash-shita'i was-sayf. That's in the second verse. So, let me, where's the right page? Here we are. Right. Al-alif is the first letter, the name of the first letter. And al-alifu means to gather together, to come together in friendship, in familiarity, in harmony. So the word ulfatun means love. And this word ulfat, not ulfatun, but ulfat is used in Arabic and so on, in Urdu, etc., to mean the same thing. And it's used with this meaning in the Quran as well, in chapter 3, verse 103. Is kuntum aghda'an fa'allafa bayna qulubikum. And you were enemies. Aghda'an. You were enemies. And what did he do? فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. He put love of each other in your hearts. فَأَلَّفَ أُلْفَت. لَوْ أَنْفَقْتَ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا ma allafta baina qulubihim. Chapter 8, verse 63. So if you had access to the riches of the whole world and you used all of that wealth, all those treasures to make them love each other, you would not have succeeded. God is saying that, what I've done, it's a miracle that these people who hated each other, who were each other's enemies and so on, I've made them not just friends, but love each other. Then we have the word muallafun, and that's used in Urdu as well. And it means a compendium, a collection. You take different things and you collect them together. And sometimes when an author, rather than writing something different and original, takes ideas from other people's writings and so on and puts them together, then on the cover it says whatever the name of the book is, Muallaf, the one who created the compendium. But it has to have some kind of a sequence. I mean, like if you take a book of alphabet, you can't have A and then X and then C and then M and then B and so on. There has to be a sequence, generally from old to new, the oldest to the newest. So we have in chapter 9, verse 60, وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ, and to satisfy, bring together their hearts. What that means is to sort of consider what is good for people. So that they join that group about which the Quran says, "Law anfaqta ma fil ardi jami'an ma allafta baina qulubihim." And that is that they become sincere Muslims. They become a part of the group who have love for each other in their hearts. And alfu, that is 1,000. Why? Because numerically you have units, tens, hundreds, and thousands. And 1,000 is the first time, the first number where they all come together. Units and tens and hundreds, and of course the 1,000. So this is why the word is used for that. And some people say this is why Alif is the first letter of the alphabet. So let's see if there are more notes somewhere. And that's what all. I was looking at some more notes, but they're just repetitive. and repeat what they say. But remember this, that, you are now brothers. God has put love in your hearts. In chapter 3, verse 102, I think it is, that it says that is a blessing. So love itself is a blessing, particularly when love is created amongst the members of a community, and they all love each other. I remember someone told me an incident that our current Amir, Dr. Abdul Karim Said Pasha, his grandfather had just, they lived in a village outside Aptabad, and surrounded by a jungle and so on. And he just finished his Isha prayer. And someone said, I have a letter from you, for you. Gave him the letter, and the letter was from an MD who said, I need to see you. So he sent word home that something urgent has come up and he's leaving. And he took his staff and he walked all night through the jungle. And at Fajr time, there was a knock on this man's door who'd sent the letter, and he opened the door, and he was astonished to find this person. I think his name was Hakim Muhammad Yahya, standing out there. And he said, how come you're here? And he said, well, you sent a letter. So how can it be that an MD calls another MD? He says, I need to see you. And that person goes home and goes to sleep rather than finding out what his brother wants. That is the kind of love that God put in the hearts of the early Muslims for each other. And that is unfortunately what is missing now. On smallest things, we start hating each other and fighting each other and God knows what else. But anyway, sad though it is, let us go to the next word, sanatin, and its triliteral root is Sin, Noon, and Wa, and that occurs in the Holy Quran 20 times in 3 different forms, or with three different meanings. 12 times as Sinin, and 7 times as Sanat, and once as Sana. And the noun, it means flash, like the lightning that flashes. And it also means a period of time, a year. And in a number of places it's used to mean year. Well, I've already mentioned that. So let's see, what does it mean? It's as I said, triliteral root is Sin, Noon, Wow. And Asana, it means flash of lightning. And this word is also used, or derivative is also used, Saniyatun, to apply to beasts of burden that take water from wells for the crops and fruits and vegetables and all this kind of thing. So there is some difference about the basic meaning and the root and so on, but that's not the purpose of these, to go into these highly technical differences and try and justify one or the other. But the purpose of these broadcasts is actually to try and see what guidance we can get from the Holy Quran. Now, the Holy Quran says, Arba'ina Sanatan, chapter 5, verse 26, so for 40 years. So you can see that the word is being used to mean a period of time that we know as a year. Sab'a Sanina, the Abba, 1247. That's 7 years, 7 continuous years. Falafa Ma'atin Sini, chapter 18, verse 25, 300 years. And it can mean, many years or some years. For example, in chapter 7, verse 130, talking about the pharaohs, the same word is used. وَلَقَدْ أَخَذْنَا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ بِالسِّنِينَ. And they had famine for some years or for many years. And the interesting thing I found about this word was that, as I said to you, it applies to those beasts. What happens is, I don't know, people certainly in India and Pakistan would have seen this, that, you have a bull and he's tied to a contraption and he goes round a well, and there's a wheel that goes round that rotates with the rotation of the bull and brings up water, which then is taken down a canal or something to for the crops and fruit trees and whatever else you've got. Now, the whole thing is based on something going round something else. Now, what we find is that we know that the sun is rotating on its own axis, and we know that the earth is going round the sun. Now compare that with the well and the bull going round it. So that is why the same or similar words are used for both. As-sanata means 1 year. Why? Because in that 1 year, the earth orbits round the sun, and the sun rotates on its axis. There is also a discussion that I don't propose to go into based on the verses of the Holy Quran about the age of the prophets and so on. And it is said that Hazrat Nuh was so many thousand years of old, and Lot was so many thousand years old, and so on and so forth. Now, the difficulty, and people say it means 50,000 years and so on and so forth. Now, the difficulty is that we don't know the measure of time that these people had. You see, there are two things actually. If you look at the time period for which traditional religious people say the earth had been created, that is less than if you add up the ages of all these prophets which are mentioned here. So there is that contradiction. But then the other thing is, we don't know what measure of time they used. You see, I mean, in this country, we used to use yards and feet and inches, and across the water, they used meters and centimeters and millimeters and what have you. So we don't know whether their year was the same year, or the word year that they used was for the period of time that we call a year. I mean, supposing they use the word year for 1 week, and if a 10-year-old child died, and you'd say, at that time, you'd say he was only 520 years old because he'd lived on this earth for 520 weeks. Now, because they use the word year, 520 years, we reading it now would think, God, that must be an old man. And now let's take this further. Supposing someone dies at the age of 50, then what happens? 520 times 5, that's over 2,500 years. Well, but the point is this, that the time period being mentioned is different. So it may be that. I don't know. I'm just putting an explanation forward. But my point is this, that Quran is a book of guidance. It's not a book of history that we should try and get accurate historical chronologies from this and so on and so on. It's a book of guidance. I mean, some people like to take scientific facts from the Holy Quran. Yes, the Quran has, by way of passing, mentioned many scientific facts, but it's not a book of physics or botany or zoology or astronomy and so on. It mentions these things, by the way, to establish God's existence and the truthfulness of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So apart from that, the Holy Quran is a book of guidance, and we should treat it as such. So with that, I'm told we've slightly gone over our time. I take my leave of you, and inshallah, God willing, we'll see each other again tomorrow. Until then, whoever you are and wherever you may be, I pray that Allah keeps the whole of humanity safe and sound and free from harm. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, goodbye.